Hello, and good evening to you all, and welcome to the second day of the Marine Litter Workshop webinar series, which is hosted and organized by the Kuwait Foundation for the Advancement of Science, KFAS, in collaboration with KISR, KU, and CEFAS. My name is Sultan Salim. It is a true honor and a pleasure to be your chair for this evening. We've got a number of experts that will join us momentarily to present their expertise within the theme of this evening, which is the governance and waste management strategies. Today's presentations are quite diverse, and we're going to talk about a number of issues that tackle upon plastic solid waste management, optimal and integrated strategies for solid waste. Without any further ado, I would like to present our first speaker for this evening, Dr. Eleni Iacovido. Dr. Eleni is from Brunel University in the United Kingdom. She is a multidisciplinary researcher developing new methods and matrices for assessing the sustainability of resource recovery systems. She is also someone who is passionate about environmental sciences and engineering with quite a deep understanding of the political, organizational, structural, and cultural aspects that act in synergy within resource recovery. So she will also be tackling waste management from a circular economy point of view. Again, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, Dr. Eleni. Dr. Eleni, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, all. And thank you, Dr. Sultan, for the introduction. And I would also like to thank the organizers for the invitation to present and also for the excellent organization of this event. It's with great pleasure that I will be able to present my work on plastic waste mismanagement and the transition to a circular economy. So I'm going to delve into how the plastic is currently managed at the moment and what we can do in order to promote circularity in this sector. So in 2018, the plastics production at global level reached to 359 million tons. And that figure reveals our great dependence and reliance on plastic and plastic components and products. And it actually shows that these plastics have an important role to play in our economy and lifestyles. They are versatile, they are cheap, they are strong and light, they are durable components, and they have excellent properties such as chemical resistance, all of which lend themselves to a number of different applications. So the plastics are used in the packaging sector, in the automotive, in electrics and electronical sectors, and the agricultural sectors, you name it. They are everywhere. However, despite the many benefits that plastics can provide in our economy, they also are associated with a number of shortcomings. And these shortcomings manifest themselves when the plastics become waste. So in 2010, according to our world in data, 273 million metric tons of plastic waste was produced at global level. In Kuwait only, we had the production of 750,000 tons of plastic waste. Now, why is the plastic such a big problem, and the plastic waste specifically? Because it is everywhere. It's in the backyards of megacities. It's lying and collected in several areas around the globe. It pollutes our beaches and parks, and that we use for recreational activities, and it finds its way in our oceans and seas and results to pollution. And that all because the plastic waste is inadequately disposed, and it can result to several implications on the environment and human health. So the mismanaged plastic waste, which refers to the plastic waste that is inadequately disposed and is littered in our environment, waste that is not formally managed, and it can end up in dump sites and uncontrolled landfills, makes up a significant proportion of the plastic that is produced at global scale. So it leaks to the environment, and in 2010, this leakage amounted to 32 million tons produced at global level. And in Kuwait, we had 11.5 kilotons of mismanaged plastic waste. Now, the mismanagement of plastic waste occurs both in developing countries as well as in developed ones. In developing countries, we have plastic waste being mismanaged because of the lack of collection. We have unsecure transportation of the plastic waste collected, which results to several items being finding their way on the street or being windblown into the surrounding environment. We also have inappropriate disposal in open dump sites and landfills, which can result to several leakages in different environmental compartments. And we have waste litter from informal recycling activities. So the waste pickers that get the recyclable material who are not able to fetch a price for the recyclable waste that they collect, they often end up disposing that into the environment. Which is uncontrolled, and it can leak into several environmental compartments. In developed countries, we have insufficient capacity on the street bins to catch on-the-go plastic waste. We have plastic waste finding its way in the environment via illegal activities such as fly tipping, often carried out by waste collection companies who don't want to bear the cost of waste gate fees that we in transporting the plastic waste to facilities for further management. We have irresponsible behavior from consumers who left their waste lying on the parks that they use for recreational activities. And then we also have plastic waste exports. That may come as a surprise. Well, in fact, the plastic waste that is exported is often branded as recycled plastic waste. But in matter of fact, evidence suggests that the recycled plastic waste that is exported is not in reality being reprocessed. Only 10% of it can be reprocessed into secondary plastic material, and the rest of it ends up into some uncontrolled sites or in other waste management facilities. Which points to the fact that this mismanagement of waste occurring in both developed and developing countries results to a large amount of plastic waste being littered in our environment. And this plastic waste often finds its way into the marine environment. And we have a number of sources and pathways that result to plastic waste entering into our seas and oceans. It's been suggested that the land-based sources, which can be anything from waste management options to littering activities to mismanagement, if you like, of the plastic waste, contributing to 80% of the plastic marine pollution. And then we also have sea-based sources that contribute to 20% of the plastic marine pollution. We've heard yesterday similar findings and similar understanding of what are the sources of the plastic waste. Here I'm also showing the pathways of the marine plastic waste, which can be windblown plastic from dump sites and landfills. Even if they are controlled landfills, we can have still some components and plastic items being windblown into the several environmental compartments. We have plastic entering the oceans and seas via wastewater discharge in the form of microplastics. We have stormwater drains that carry both macro and microplastics to the environment. We have atmospheric input. We have the transfer of plastic, macroplastics, but also microplastics from the rivers to the seas and oceans and several other ways. But this shows that if 80% of the plastic waste comes from the land-based sources, then we really need to understand which are the sources and which are the pathways that lead to these pollution incidents that we currently have. And plastic marine pollution is a major issue, it's a global challenge, and it has been detected in all of the world's oceans. And the plastic has entered also the food chain. which poses several risks not only to the environment but also to human health. Basically, plastic is everywhere. It's in the air, it's in the water, it's in the soil. And it does not only enter these environmental compartments via littering, and neither only via mismanaged plastic waste. It also enters the environment via our established technologies that we use for the management of the waste. So let's take landfill, for example. We have a number of different plastic packaging lying there unused in some way. And they can be blown to the surrounding environments, causing lots of pollution. But the leachate, if it's acidic in nature, it means that it will break down these plastic components into micro and nanoplastics. And this release all the chemical additives into the atmosphere. So it's not only value untapped when we dispose our plastic waste to landfills, but it's also leading to pollution. And we have a sword and range of negative externalities by these processes. If the plastic is incinerated or is open burn, as is the practice in developing countries, then we have the values embedded in plastics being entirely lost. The only value that we capture is the calorific value, the energy content of the plastic. As being made from fossil fuel, they have a lot of energy content and they can provide energy and heat. But this benefit, which is the only benefit that we can extract when we incinerate plastic with energy recovery, it's also associated with negative externalities. Why? Because we have all range of different pollutants being emitted back into the atmosphere. And then we have the recycling process. We have lots of values being captured by reprocessing plastic into a secondary commodity. But again, this process is associated with some externalities because we need to add more resources in order to reprocess these plastic materials back into the generation of secondary materials. So all these three processes that are currently used in our systems for the management of plastic waste signify that we have value of the plastic being destroyed. And so we need to understand a bit better how we can make use of the durability of the plastic components, which can range from hundreds to thousands of years, and instead of disposing it into the environment and making sure that this degrades in a very slow and polluting way, capturing this value and making most use of it by the means of circularity. So how can we make the transition to circular economy? We need to understand the system as a whole. We need to understand what are the production processes, what are the consumption and management processes that take place in the system. I know that the figure that I have there is very simplistic, but by only looking at the system in its holistic way, we can understand how to cut through the complexity of the plastic system. So we need to understand these processes. And then we need to look into the market input and consumption. If, as you may be well aware, the plastic packaging contributes to almost 40% of the plastic waste that is produced in our global economy. What we need to understand is, do we actually need all that plastic packaging? Or can we cut down the amount of plastic packaging that we use? And plastic packaging is the material that mostly becomes waste within less than a year. And if we take marine pollution as our focus area, you will be surprised to see that most of the plastic marine litter is plastic packaging waste. So the key consideration at this step is to try to understand which plastic is avoidable. And if it's avoidable and it's not needed in our economy, then how can we devise ways and interventions in order to prevent its production in the first place? So that refers to the prevention as a key principle of promoting circularity in our system. And plastic waste generation per capita is an important indicator that shows where interventions are mostly needed. And if you look at in this map, Kuwait is one of the areas that we have a massive amount of plastic waste generation per capita. So one of the interventions that we have to understand is how we can help the consumers make smarter decisions when it comes to their purchasing practices. And the consumers is not just about making the right decisions when they purchase plastic components and products, but it's also about how they dispose these when they become waste. And the disposal practices tell a lot about how the plastic waste is going to be managed. If it's being disposed into the general waste bin, chances are that it's going to end up in landfills or in incineration facilities. If it's going to be disposed in the recyclable waste stream, then the chances are that it could be, in the best case, reprocessed into a secondary material. Then we have the collection and the sorting and the transportation to landfill and waste incineration with energy recovery. In the UK, we'll call these energy from waste facilities, where we can see how much of the plastic waste is distributed into these different processes and try to understand what can be done in order to prevent the dissipation of value from the plastic waste components into the different waste management options, and rather divert it to the sorting option, which can then help us to reprocess the plastic waste into a secondary material. There we also have the exports. The trading of plastic waste has taken a lot of attention recently, because the plastic waste that is being exported for recycling is not in reality being recycled, as I mentioned before. So although it's being accounted against the targets that most of the countries want to meet in relation to meeting their recycling rates, in reality, they contribute to littering activities in developing countries which do not have the right infrastructure to deal with the plastic that is being the waste that is being sent to them. And I left the production for last, because this is one of the most important stages in the plastic system when we are looking at this as a whole. And this is not only because it links with how much plastic we put in the market in the first place, but it also tells us something as to how easily it is to understand how to use the plastic components we have in our system, and how to better dispose them when we no longer want to make use of these plastic components. So the best interventions start from prevention, and the prevention of avoidable plastic waste is possible, but we then have to understand how to make that happen. We also need to understand how to promote clear labeling on the plastic, and that helps the consumers, the end users of the plastic components and products, to make the right decisions when they want to dispose their plastic waste. And then we also need to make sure that we promote the use of recycled content in new plastic components and products that are produced in our system. In that way, we will maximize efforts in promoting the reprocessing rate of plastic waste, which at the moment, after prevention, is the best option that we currently have in our system in order to enable the circularity in the plastic packaging and other plastic components and product systems. So basically, there is a challenge with making these kind of interventions at the production stage, and that relate to environmental, technical, and economic feasibility of solutions, which takes time. It takes investment and consideration of aesthetic and brand images and marketability risks. But the development of innovative and sustainable solutions is an opportunity we cannot miss, especially if we want to make the transition to a circular economy. So first, we need to understand our system as a whole. We need to understand the stakeholders that are involved in the system, the various processes and structures that are that describe our systems in different areas. And then we need to make sure that we try to enforce these developments in promoting circularity. So some important remarks for marine plastic pollution: intercepting the system to ensure that the plastic is not going to be more than fish in our oceans is something that we need to do. And some concluding remarks for tackling plastic pollution and achieving circularity is about understanding the complexity of our systems, exploiting new niches methodically, assessing which interventions have the potential to capture multidimensional value, and also to promote collaboration between all stakeholders involved in the system, making sure that their interests are met, but at the same time, we build viable and sustainable systems. And all of that demands striking the right balance. And with that final remark, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eleni, for that very informative presentation on the topic. It was really a pleasure to be listening to all of that, and there is a lot to learn from all of that. I would just like to remind everyone who has joined us from the beginning or just now that there will be a survey conducted by the Kuwait Foundation for the Advancement of Science towards the end of the Q&A panel session that we have. So if you don't mind sticking around and taking on the survey, which helps improve such events. I would also like to remind everyone that there are handouts and presentations available if you click on the handout section, which is basically today's abstracts, today's presentations as well, which are made available to you. And you can always ask questions in the chat room. I've been pulling in a few interesting comments and questions that we'll be discussing in our Q&A panel. Without any further ado, I would like to also introduce our next speaker, but thank you very much once again, Dr. Eleni. And our next speaker, who's going to talk to us about Abu Dhabi's single-use plastic policy, a journey towards reducing plastics entering the environment where it causes harm, is Winston Cowie. Now, Winston Cowie has developed a successful career as an award-winning environmental policy manager, working throughout New Zealand, or as they would pronounce it down under New Zealand, and the Middle East, Trinidad and Tobago, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America as well. He also currently works as a marine policy manager at the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi, on a broad policy portfolio that includes sustainable development, fisheries, and aquaculture. Winston, it's all yours. Thank you very much.
Shukran jazilan, Dr. Magasat. Ladies and gentlemen, Ahlan wa sahlan. Ana ismi Winston Cowie, Marine Policy Manager at the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi. We are the scientific research organisation and environmental regulator for Abu Dhabi Emirate, one of the 7 emirates of the UAE. And for the past 2 years, we've been on a journey towards launching a single-use plastic policy. So I'm going to take you through that journey today and some of the components of our policy. So we're going to look at plastic as a global and regional threat. We're going to look at some of the responses globally and locally. We're going to talk about the importance of a marine debris and single-use plastic baseline, and also go through the components of our policy. So just to frame the issue, plastic is a fantastic, excuse the pun, resource that is used across society, you know, in pretty much every sector. We need plastic, but the issue is the single-use plastic, which is 36% of global production. To give you an example, a plastic bag is used on average for 12 minutes. And the issue is it's entering the environment where it's causing harm to our wildlife. So to give you an example of scale, every minute, 1 rubbish truck of single-use plastic is dumped into the sea. The forecast is by 2030, it'll be 2 rubbish trucks, and by 2050, 4. So it is a huge issue. In terms of how far we have to go as a global society, only 9% of plastic is recycled. So that shows how far we have to go as we transition towards this circular economy. But on the positive, in 127 different countries, we've got teams that are motivated and passionate and working on these issues. And that's certainly true in Abu Dhabi. So to take a dive regionally into the Arabian Gulf, it's known in scientific circles as a climate change laboratory because it's the hottest sea in the world, and any climate change issues should manifest here first. I would submit to you that it's also a marine debris and plastics laboratory, and that's because of the slow circulation of the Gulf. You know, surface waters take between 1 and 3 years to go from the Straits of Hormuz all the way around and back again. So any plastic or litter in this environment stays in this environment. And we heard yesterday that 70% of marine litter ends up on the seabed, 15% floats on the surface, and only 15% ends up on the coast. So what you're seeing, if you go down the beach, is only a fraction, a small proportion of it. Is marine debris and plastic affecting our biodiversity here in the region? You know, you would have seen Blue Planet and David Attenborough holding the jar that had 276 pieces of plastic in it that came from a baby albatross. And I think sometimes with these issues, you always think that they're far away, you know, on some far-flung island. Well, I can assure you plastic or single-use plastic is having an impact on our biodiversity here in the Arabian Gulf. So to talk about salahif and turtles, we've got 2 species in Abu Dhabi, the greens and the hawksbills, and we didn't know where the greens nested. We knew they foraged in our waters. So with our partners Emirates Nature, WWF, we tagged some of the green turtles on Butina in the year of Zayed, and we named some of the turtles after the values of Zayed, and one of them was called Wisdom. No nepotism intended. And as you can see from the presentation, absolutely amazing. These turtles went all the way down to Oman, nested, and came all the way back over a 9-month period. So this shows that, you know, even if you manage this issue in your locality, it is a regional issue because biodiversity moves. And indeed, on the east coast of the UAE, a study was done by our Sharjah colleagues, which found that 12 out of 14 of the green turtles they did a necropsy on, plastic was a contributing factor in their death. So this is this is an image here of how we catch those green turtles, and once caught, we put the tag on, and that's my only attempt at humor this evening. So hopefully you liked it. Hawksbill turtles, which nest on Abu Dhabi's beaches. We've recently completed a study with Paris Sorbonne University, looking at the turtles, these turtles which wash up on Abu Dhabi's beaches during winter, suffering from cold water shock. So we've been looking at the plastic content in their fecal matter, and I can't tell you what those results are tonight, but what I would say is the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi is soon to launch a documentary film called Wild Abu Dhabi, The Turtles of Al Dhafra, and those results will be presented in that documentary. And just on turtles, while we're on them, if a turtle ingests 1 piece, okay, of plastic, it's got a 22% higher chance of dying. If it has more than 1 piece, it's got a 50% chance. It's very sobering. So to look at the big picture, at the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi, we're not afraid to take on issues head on. If you look at these stats here, you know, in the UAE, 11 billion plastic bags, single-use bags, are produced annually, and per capita, the use is 1,184. You know, that's over 3 times the global average of 300. And we're not hiding from this. We're not hiding from this data. Indeed, we've put it right at the front of our single-use plastic policy and said we've got massive oversupply and we're using far too many bags. Okay, in developing policy, you look at the socioeconomics, and our plastic producers in Abu Dhabi, only 3% is produced and consumed in Abu Dhabi of single-use plastic. So when we look at this, we can see that there's not going to be a significant impact on our Abu Dhabi plastic producers if we implement a plastic policy. So far we've got the science impacting our biodiversity. We've got massive oversupply of plastic bags. Any policy is not going to impact our plastic producers. But what about the court of public opinion? And there was a period last year, you know, when there was almost a headline a week or 2 headlines a week on plastic. So there was a really strong feeling about it. And one of our partners, Waitrose, the supermarket, did a study and implemented a 0.25 fill fee on single-use plastic bags, which resulted in a 75% reduction in use, which was incredible. So we wanted to test that too. So we did a survey of people across the UAE, and it was an incredible response. Nearly 100% considered single-use plastic a priority action and wanted action, and nearly 100% wanted our recycling system improved too. So really, really strong feeling and really a strong mandate for change. And as an aside, an interesting fact, we asked people about the fee, what amounts would make them change their behaviour and not take a plastic bag at the counter. And the results were really interesting. And on average, the amount was 1.5 dirhams. So as we move forward and develop our regulation in that regard, this is good, you know, really good background information. Responses, look, we benchmarked internationally, and look, there's this massive wave of policy change across the world. At that time, 127 countries, you had 250 different brands, you had our federal ministry implementing a coalition to look at how we could transition to the circular economy. There was really, there was a real wave of we need to manage plastic at fast. Plastic. So what were our responses in Abu Dhabi? Well, initially in the World Ocean Summit, we made a declaration to clean Abu Dhabi. And a lot of people always say to me, you know, why are you promoting beach cleanups? Surely you've got to focus on the issue, which is massive oversupply. Well, I would submit to you that we have to do both, okay? Because as we saw before, the Arabian Gulf is a closed system. Whatever ends up there stays there. So these cleanups are really, really important. And just want to thank all the different NGOs and people working on those in Abu Dhabi. Emirates Nature, WWF, Plastic Free UAE, ASRAC, Dive Mahara, you guys are all doing amazing work. So look, we, with a number of different government entities, we signed this declaration to clean Abu Dhabi. And really it was about bringing together and mobilizing resources to clean our beaches. Some of the key priority themes, you can see these here, and you saw them yesterday in my colleague Brett Lyons' presentation. We worked on a regional paper together, and these are the components of that regional action plan. And these also are manifested in our Abu Dhabi plastics policy. So marine debris and single-use plastic, which plastics should we manage? So the EU did this amazing study, okay, across 17 countries, over 300 beaches, and they counted all the different plastic waste they found on the beaches, and these were the top 15 items found, all the things you would expect. So the question we had when we were developing this policy was, which plastics do we manage? Do we wait until we've done our own marine debris baseline, or do we go on what's happening internationally? And we decided to adopt the precautionary principle and manage the top 15 or 16 we went for in the end, plastics manifesting on our beaches. So our marine debris baseline, we obviously couldn't travel this year, so we did that over summer. It was hot. We walked kilometres and kilometres. The results aren't out yet, but I can assure you we did see a lot of plastic, and we did see similar to what I showed you in the slide before. But equally here, it's not just about a government entity doing the baseline. The community has got such an important role to play, and we developed a citizen science app called Clean Abu Dhabi, which we want to launch soon, and people use, categorize all the different data they find. We just haven't been able to because of Corona. So moving on to Abu Dhabi's single-use plastic policy. Our vision is to ensure sustainable production and consumption of plastics in Abu Dhabi. Okay, and we've got a couple of key objectives. The first, okay, plastic bags being a proxy, reduce the use of single-use plastic materials, and declare Abu Dhabi Emirate free of single-use plastic bags by 2022. Imagine we've gone from over 1,000 bags per capita in the UAE. The vision by 2022 is to have none. That's the vision. Second objective, we want to reduce the amount of plastic entering the environment where it causes harm. Abu Dhabi government, we want to lead by example and have Abu Dhabi government offices single-use plastic free by 2022 as well. So everybody is in on this and motivated for change. And finally, changing public behaviour towards more sustainable measures. So in a nutshell, what does our policy involve? It involves a ban on single-use plastic bags, and also a ban on utensils and single-use items being put in takeaway bags and delivered to your house when you've got a clear alternative at your home. Okay, so that's the bans. Fees on the other single-use plastic items, cups and lids, cutlery, knives and forks. We want to implement a fee, okay, to reduce that amount of plastic being utilised. For bottles, we'd like to implement a return scheme whereby there's incentives to return those bottles, and so they don't end up in the marine environment, which they currently are. And finally, that declaration to Clean Abu Dhabi. Just rushing through this, the 8 key items we were going to do in the short term, those are items 1 to 8. But now, because COVID has delayed, I guess, the implementation of the policy, we're going to do it all at once and get it all done by 2022. And for these items here, where there's no ready alternative on the market, you know, sweet wrappers, crisp packets, we're looking at working groups, you know, with these industries and implementing that extended producer responsibility principle. So this piece is in motion too. To Indicators, how are we going to measure the success of our policy? Just wrapping up. First, the percentage of single-use plastic bags consumed in the Emirate. I said before, imagine going from 1,182 down to 0. That's the vision. The second is a 50% reduction in the number of plastic bottles used and returned within that bottle return scheme. And finally, the number of Abu Dhabi government entities that also ban single-use plastic through procurement and facilities and whatnot. Post policy implementation, okay, 2024 plus, we want to move to a single-use plastic era. Hello, Doctor. And just finally, a little bit of inspiration to finish with. We had a team that went to Antarctica in the year of Zayed, 2018. I was lucky enough to be part of it. We took with us a whole lot of solar lights, and with those solar lights, we sent a message to the world on climate change and single-use plastics. And just imagine fiddling around with a whole lot of lights every night in the dark in Antarctica, trying to make all these words. It was a long process, but we got there. But the message is very clear. Global warming and plastics are our challenge. Ladies and gentlemen, everybody has a role to play in your family, in your community, in your workplace. Energize and be the change. Finally, we've had a whale shark in Abu Dhabi for the past 7 weeks, 2 of them actually. It's been absolutely incredible. And over that time, I have seen it, you wouldn't believe it, bobbing a single-use coffee cup on its head like a football. It didn't swallow it, but I swear I saw it bobbing it on its head. So this stuff does enter in the environment. It does cause harm. Don't ever forget the why, which is biodiversity. Shukran jazilan, ila al-amam, forwards. Inshallah.
Thank you very much, Winston. That was a lovely talk and a lovely message to wrap up the proceedings. Just to remind everyone that the presentation is now uploaded for everyone who's interested to get a copy of it. And on to our next section of this evening, which is the Speed Science Talks. Now it gives me a great pleasure to introduce my next speaker, Ms. Samia Al-Day, whom I know personally, and I'm honored to do so. Ms. Samia is a senior environmental specialist from Kuwait with almost 20 years of expertise in international development, environmental management, policy analysis, and scientific research institutions. She has also worked for the World Bank, the Middle East, North Africa region, and with the United Nations Development Program as a staff member, and more recently as a consultant. Without any further ado, I'll hand over to Mrs. Samia Al-Day, who will be speaking to us today about the World Bank support to Kuwait municipality on the Municipal Solid Waste Management and Action Plan. Mrs. Samia, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Sultan. ومساء الخير جميعا. Very, very honored to join the Marine Litter Symposium. I'm going to give a brief overview of waste management in general, without not necessarily focusing on plastics, but what's happening in the sector and how it relates to plastics. I can see a lot of the questions we're talking about regulations and so on, so I can just give you an overview of what we're doing. And I just have to add a caveat that the work we're doing right now with Kuwait municipality is under review, so there's not a lot of information I can share at this moment, but hopefully the findings will be made public by Kuwait municipality in the near future. So let's start with what are the waste management challenges in Kuwait overall. So there is a rapid urbanization going on in Kuwait. The population is increasing rapidly yearly, and as a result, the waste generation as well. So that we could see that the urbanization growth is at 3.6%. And the total amount of municipal waste collected is close to 2 million tons, and there's an additional of 12 million tons of construction waste. And that's because of, as a result of the urbanization that's going on. And one of the main challenges with all of this is that there's no a holistic approach to solid waste management overall. Some of the regulations overlap or are scattered, and the responsibilities between the agencies are also scattered. They're not in tune, and sometimes each agency operates in a silo. There's also some limited capacity as well within some of the stakeholders, in particular the government stakeholders, especially in terms of operations and monitoring and evaluation. And then we also have the way we dispose of waste in Kuwait. So what we could call landfills, they're not really landfills, they're more like open dump sites. There are 3 operational now, one on the 7th Ring Road, and one in Jahra, and one in Mina Abdullah. It's not, so in general, most, a proper way of disposing is a sanitary landfill where environmental controls are in place. What's going on right now is that, unfortunately, it's almost like the 7th Ring Road is almost like a 40-meter mountain now of buried waste. And in addition, there are old dump sites that are closed dump sites that also pose an environmental challenge, and they're considered a lost economic opportunity because that land is not suitable for use right now. And then in terms of environmental challenge, obviously because there's the issue of emissions from organic waste and so on present in the landfills. And then the key issue here is that as individuals, as Kuwaitis, as citizens, or as residents of Kuwait as well, we are one of the highest per capita producers of waste. It's at 1.4 kilograms cubed per day. That's higher than a lot of the regional and global averages. And then and you can see here the forecast. So you know, this is a modeling basically. The projections are quite dramatic. I mean, you know, in terms of organic and so on waste, if we continue business as usual. And what is the waste that we have in Kuwait? So household and commercial waste is all disposed at the landfills that I mentioned, and you can see this is what's relevant to this symposium. 25% of the waste in Kuwait is plastic. Majority is organic waste, so which really includes food and so on. Yeah, so we go back to this issue. You know, we are, as the previous speaker mentioned, that we are quite high generators of plastic waste. And who's responsible for what? So that people can understand the big picture. So Kuwait Municipality, it's responsible for the immediate waste sort of municipal planning, which is the general cleanliness, the disposal, the treatment, and so on of waste. And it's responsible for implementation of the legislation, specific waste, solid waste legislation. And then, so Kuwait Municipality also operates with the Kuwait Environment Public Authority. So Kuwait Environment Public Authority will set the environmental regulation standards and oversees the monitoring and enforcement as well. So this is what I mean about some sort of overlap. And then, and also Kuwait Environment, KEPA, is responsible for environmental impact assessments for development projects, which kind of feeds into the construction waste aspect and overall waste generation from big development projects. And then it also sets guidelines for design and operation. In addition, you have the Public licenses for recycling, etc., and then specifications as well for recycling materials and so on. And then the Ministry of Public Works is for construction waste. These are the laws responsible in Kuwait. So you can see there's Kuwait municipality laws and the Kuwait Environment Protection Law. I don't want to take too long because it's a limited presentation. What is Kuwait trying to do? So there's a national development plans related to waste management. So there's three main plans. Kuwait Vision 2035, which has a pillar on sustainable living environment, which includes waste management objectives, and the Kuwait Master Plan. In the Master Plan, there is a push for increasing recycling, composting, and improving the overall waste management because to address the urban growth that I mentioned. And then KFAS has the National Waste Management Strategy, which will be discussed after my presentation. And these are all aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, in particular Goal 12 on responsible production and consumption. What are we doing with the Solid Waste Management Action Plan between the World Bank and Kuwait Municipality? Overall, the main objectives are to minimize the impacts of waste generation and manage it in a way that benefits the health and the environment and comply with the regulations that I mentioned previously. And then also the issue here as well, we all know that there's land scarcity in Kuwait. So we want to one of the main objectives is to reduce land dedicated to waste management. And this way, increase the value and find better methods for handling waste other than just regular like landfills and so on. And then the third objective, which is to look at the bigger picture, kind of related to climate change, which is try to reduce also the greenhouse gas emissions that are emitted from some of the landfills, and have a clean living urban area, and then as well, hopefully in the future, try to produce renewable energy. While encouraging the participation of the private sector. This is related to encouraging SMEs and so on to get into the recycling sector where it's viable, because also, as mentioned, the recycling is not always viable. That was very, very quick and brief, and I'm open to any questions. Thank you, Dr. Sultan. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Samia. That was informative, and I've pulled very detailed comments, and I appreciate that. Maybe we can have that discussion later on in the Q&A panel. Again, whomever is interested, Mrs. Samia Al-Daei's presentation is also available now in the handout section. And now with our next speed science talk, presented by Mr. Sebastian Fresh. He's from Black Forest Solutions Company in Germany. Mr. Sebastian Fresh is one of the managing directors of Black Forest Solutions, and he holds the responsibility of leading an international waste management consultancy team of 18 staff members. Mr. Fresh also has 18 years of waste management experience in more than 60 countries, with 12 years of practical experience. Their work also includes a project here in Kuwait as well. And I don't want to take much of his time at the moment. So, Mr. Fresh, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Sultan, for this kind introduction, and welcome everyone from my side. As mentioned, my name is Sebastian Fresh. I'm working for Black Forest Solutions, but I would like to present tonight a project where we are working on behalf of Fraunhofer Umsicht, and as mentioned before, also this project is being done for the Kuwait Environmental Public Authority, Kuwait EPA, and our project is about surveying and establishment of a comprehensive database for waste management in Kuwait, or the acronym is EMISC waste. Maybe a few points about Fraunhofer, who is leading the whole project. I'm the project manager on site in Kuwait. Fraunhofer is actually the largest research and development organization in Europe, It includes 69 institutes and independent research facilities with about 24,000 employees, and it has more than 2.1 billion euros of research funds, number 15 of the German patents. And the interesting part, I think, also that it's not only science and research, it's also a combination of how to convert or how to transfer science and research into business models and into business cases. That's why Fraunhofer is particularly also supporting spin-offs out of this research. For the Kuwait project, we are together with Fraunhofer Umsicht. That is a specialized institute within the Fraunhofer Group on circular economy and waste management. We are working for EPA Kuwait since the beginning of 2017. That is a very unique and rare consultancy project because it goes over a time period of 4 years. So we have plenty of time to look very detailed into the Kuwaiti waste management sector. And we could have a chance within this 4 years to really go into various different aspects. So technical aspects, legal aspects, social aspects. So we had a chance to look into a very broad picture. And plastic waste and marine litter is certainly also one topic that we are always having in mind with this project. But maybe I would also like to add on what I heard in the before presentations. When we actually see marine litter and when the plastic waste has reached the rivers or the shores, oceans, then this is a situation where we are speaking about a symptom, right? It's not the cause itself. And later in the presentation, I would like to give some thoughts about how we can actually tackle the cause of the problem. Of course, and I will refer on this, I think tomorrow evening, these beach cleanups and tackling the situation or solving the situation when the waste has been already reached the marine environment is also as important. But please let's not forget also to start or to look at how we can solve the original problem. Maybe briefly about the legal aspects, and Dr. Samia has mentioned this. There's actually even a law for this kind of strategy or an article within this law. To mention here, Article 34, to develop and to write a national program for an integrated waste management system. And this is what we're actually doing in several, we call it tracks. There is one track that goes about or is about data collection and survey in Kuwait, where we looked into waste types, amounts, sources. We looked into the collection and transportation part, treatment and landfills, legislation, finance. Then there is one specific track that goes or that covers the point of once we collected all the data, how to use the data, what to make out of it. And there's at EPA Kuwait a very large database that also is working with GIS database, and we turn all the data that we are collecting into applications, into apps, web applications that can be used by the authorities, but also by public and private stakeholders. So there's a large range of stakeholders that have access to these apps that we are developing, and more than 20 apps on different waste management fields. And most important then, of course, to result in a national waste management strategy. And as Dr. Samia was also saying, it's a bit challenging because you have different responsibilities for different types of waste in Kuwait, and we are trying to align all these different perspectives and expectations and to coordinate this. And we go in a strategy where we forecast waste, where we define goals, indicators, target values, action plans, capacity planning, finance planning. All this is being done in a duration of 4 years. You see some of the partners working for it, so it's not only done by Fraunhofer. This is an overview about the 4 tracks. Here we went into household sorting of waste. The industrial waste was a part of our work, commercial and also healthcare and medical waste. One aspect that was not mentioned yet, we are surveying all the landfills, active and closed in Kuwait. And as also Dr. Samir said, these landfills are currently, not properly used, and especially this closed landfills. It's literally a waste of land, and we are investigating what is inside those landfills, and we get this kind of diagrams here where you see how deep is the landfill. What was buried there, what kind of hazardous waste, what kind of other material. This is still possible to detect this. And also when we speak about the policy, when you look at Europe, and I can tell from the German experience, one major milestone why Germany, and maybe we can speak for most of Europe, why we achieved these high recycling rates was one quite brave step in 2005, where we said, there should be no untreated waste being sent to landfill. So in Germany, there is no landfill anymore for municipal solid waste when it is not being treated before. So that means you must be creative. You must find an alternative to landfill. As long as you have the landfill still in operation, the waste will always go there. So we can speak about waste to energy or RDF or recycling or many different approaches, but landfill has just the advantage from the generator's point of view that it costs nothing to dump it there, and this is actually cutting and killing all the innovations, and this is one critical part that must be discussed or solved in Kuwait and maybe for the whole region in the GCC. Here's a short overview about the different databases, more than 20 applications based on GIS data that you can really track and monitor where is waste coming from, where does it go to, that you can also find the sources of waste going into the marine environment, getting into marine litter. And I would like especially to show you this slide here, because as I've said in the beginning of this presentation, at my end now, I would like to say, in my opinion, besides thinking about operating landfills that are killing innovations for waste treatment, the second most important thing is to discuss extended producer responsibility, EPR. Because the EPR system means that when someone generates a product made out of plastic, or whatever packaging, because it covers the entire packaging industry. But let's see, or let's talk about plastic packaging tonight. Then this packaging producer must spend an extra amount as a fee, as an EPR fee. And this EPR budget can then be used to set up a proper recycling infrastructure in a country. If you don't have the budget for this, then it will be very difficult to come up with technologies to really find a technical solution at the source of the problem, not at the end once the waste has been already reached the marine environment. As a last slide, this is the vision that we have so far created for Kuwait. The vision of the National Waste Management Strategy Kuwait is developing an effective waste management system which minimizes the adverse effects of waste generation and management on human health and the environment, while enabling the effective application of the 5-step waste hierarchy to ensure efficient, safe, and environmental sound utilization of waste streams as resources. So 2 messages, please. So one is, please talk about EPR, extended producer responsibility. This will bring us a budget for solving the actual problem at the root cause. And the second one is that we should stop landfilling the waste. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frisch. That was very informative, much appreciated. And once again, the presentation of Mr. Sebastian Fresh is going to be available now, and the handout section. And this is the last speed science talk, which I will be personally presenting, and I believe it spills nicely into the final part of this session, which basically I will be talking about development for a plastic solid waste management strategy for here within the state of Kuwait in light of various R&D activities. I will just briefly say that I personally have been in the R&D works for about 15 years plus at the moment. I'm also the manager for the Environmental Pollution and Climate Program within the Kuwait Institute for Scientific Research at the moment. And I've been working in plastic solid waste, namely in circular economy and plastic to fuel and energy for the past sort of 13 years or so. So it gives me great pleasure today that I will be talking about a number of activities that spill directly into a mega sort of strategy to manage plastic solid waste here in Kuwait. There have been a lot of talk this evening about the health status within the marine environment, and Dr. Eleni has mentioned something very interesting, that we are talking about terrestrial solid waste, which takes down to the other 20%, which is down to the marine environment and the marine health and status and mildew, as it were, as the major concern. But we're also quite lucky here in Kuwait, because according to recent stats, we have a collection rate of 100%. Our plastic, whether it is from the municipal sector or whether it is within the household items sector, just in particular without the commercial or institutional sectors here in Kuwait, is about 18% or so of the total municipal solid waste. Within a household sort of solid waste component, it constitutes about 16%, or anything between 12 to 16%, depending on season and time of the year. This is also within limits worldwide within various sort of countries. So we need to think of the stats that we've got here. And by the way, this number here in Kuwait, which is a per capita number, has been a major controversial number. A lot of people report municipal solid waste to be 1.55 kilogram per capita per day. But this report by the World Bank in 2012 has mentioned that Kuwait has got about 5.7 kilograms per capita per day. Even if we consider it as 1.55 kilograms, I personally believe it's even higher than the 5.7 mark. This is due to various reasons. Maybe some of the publications that discuss this could be shared offline later on. Namely, obviously, is the socioeconomic reasons, and talking about management of solid waste here in Kuwait, and in particular the plastic component, have been a number of projects governmental-wise, namely putting standards for the biodegradables that we have set a standard for within KISR, prelim standards for oxo-biodegradables, and I personally came to the conclusion that using recycled mechanical secondary route is much more environmentally beneficial than oxo-biodegradables for Kuwait. And I say this based on the hard science that we have been conducting. Of course, there is the sanitary landfill site, and within our also activities that we've conducted within KISR, and namely R&D activities, some of the sites are also rehabitable. Not all sites in Kuwait that have been used are not basically without a chance of rehabilitation. Based on our data and our work, even the plastics within the various routes that are tackled, and even talking about more of a circularity, some of those sites, even if we landfill mine those plastics or even see the sites as it were, we can easily integrate them back into the mega sort of circular economy, or the economy, the local economy that we help to boost. So, for example, we have a secondary mechanical project that we've conducted, funded by both KFAS and Kuwait Petrochemicals Company. And we have actually mainly concluded a number of very important R&D sort of conclusion that can boost the local economy. But what fits today's talk is not the natural and the accelerating weathering part, is the mechanical recycling part of it all, which is basically we can develop with the know-how that we have up to 90% by weight, a film product for the market within the local standard, and even sometimes surpassing it. And this tells you that the plastic is within high integrity, which tells you also that the waste is being discarded in a very early stage here in Kuwait. Again, back to the socio-economic reasons. I've also conducted and recently concluded the government initiative project supported by the Supreme Council, which is building the waste management unit. And we've got the pilots at the moment and the bench scale reactors to prove the concept of diesel, gasoline, high hydrocarbon content of fuel being produced from plastics. Some of these projects are also sponsored by the British Council and also sponsored by the Kuwait Foundation for the Advancement of Sciences. So this also tells me very clearly that we've got a sort of a roadmap that we need to integrate all of these R&D findings after proving the fact that our plastic is within high integrity and could be easily used to boost local economy here in Kuwait. Finally, I would just like to say, don't waste waste. And these pictures were taken very recently in the 7th Ring Road landfill site. As I've said earlier on, we need to think, as many presenters said here today, seriously about the ways that we manage our solid waste, and in particular our municipal solid waste, if not for anything, for the next generation. Finally, I say thank you very much, and I'll open the Q&A panel discussion. And last but certainly not least, don't waste waste. Thank you very much. So basically now we're going to go to the Q&A panel discussion that we have. If you don't mind, I would like to first of all point the fact that the presentation is now also available in the handout section in the chat room here, I believe. And I would like to invite back to the floor both my keynote speakers, Dr. Eleni and Mr. Winston Cowie, to have a quick discussion first and pick their brains about a couple of questions that we had already in our chat. Later on, maybe we can have also more of a detailed discussion offline, and then we will talk to both Mrs. Samir A. and Mr. Sebastian. Welcome back, Winston.
Doctor.
Welcome back, Dr. Eleni.
Hello.
How are you? That was very informative talk on both of you, so I congratulate you once again. That was very nice. And we've had few questions that I believe will be sort of very good to start with here. A gentleman by the name of Brian Eric says that he's originally from Denmark. He joined us here, and he thinks that plastic bags should be banned. And those plastic bags are a major environmental issue, as you have already heard within our discussions here today. Those plastic bags, he believes, whether it is for Kuwait or the GCC, like Abu Dhabi, should be charged for consumers. I don't know, Dr. Eleni, I'll start with you as ladies first. What do you think? Should we put a penalty, like I remember once there was the UK 5p penalty or 5p fees on plastic bags? Do you think that would work for us here in Kuwait or the GCC in general to reduce our consumption?
Thank you for the question. That's interesting because in countries where the fee for plastic bags has been introduced, they have seen a massive reduction in the plastic bag use. In the UK, we had more than 2/3 in the plastic bag consumption being reduced since the introduction of the fee, which is a massive reduction, and people have become more mindful about carrying plastic bags with them so that they don't have to purchase a new one. I'm not sure if this is going to work in Kuwait. You have to look into how people behave and how they respond to these kind of measures in order to see whether this is going to be successful or not.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Eleni. Winston, what do you think, picking up from where Dr. Eleni stopped, do you think that would work, or do we need more studies to study the consumer's behavior here?
Look, I think it depends on the country. I mean, if you look at the different responses, there's been mainly bans on the African continent and maybe mainly fees in Europe. That's what our benchmarking showed. But it really depends on your analysis. And in our case in Abu Dhabi, we had biodiversity being harmed. We had a negligible impact on plastic producers in Abu Dhabi, which did enable us to, to implement a ban. And certainly there was a swell of public opinion, supporting that policy position. So, look, they all work. You can either get to zero or, have close to a 90% reduction if you do implement a fee. But it depends on the locality and your policy analysis, really. They all work. Taking action is a start.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Winston. I personally think that here in Kuwait, we lack the infrastructure to deal with plastic solid waste. First of all, that should be supported. And then maybe we can talk about segregation, what have you. We're in a country that lacks transfer stations, MRFs, wet MRFs as well. There is a lot to do here in Kuwait before we sort of tackle that issue. But also there is another question, I believe it's dedicated to both of you. It's a straight-on question from Mr. Mohammed. I'll start with Dr. Eleni. Can you please provide a current example of a circular economy implemented in one country?
As I have already responded to that in the chat, I will give the same response that circularity can manifest its way in many solutions. For example, banning the plastic bags or other types of single-use plastic is a form of circularity. Introducing and improving recycling and reprocessing of plastic in domestic level is a form of circularity. Reusing of plastic items is a form of circularity. Now, the extent at which these occur in different countries is what we really need to work on and try to improve, because that will ensure that we promote circularity in the entire plastic system. So if there are good examples, I think there are different examples, and we also need to take into account the specificities of each country. So what works in the UK, that's not going to necessarily work in Abu Dhabi or Kuwait. We need to look into the area-specific characteristics, the different structures we have in place in order to be able to implement the circularity that will work best in these countries.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. The same question to Winston. What do you think? Can you provide us with some insights from your expertise about circularity?
Look, an excellent response by Dr. And yeah, look, you're right. It depends on the country and also the type of plastic or the product. Norway, as an example, has a fantastic bottle incentive return scheme where 97% of those bottles are returned, and 92% of that is turned into new bottles. So there are some great examples around the world. It depends on your country and the single-use plastic you want to manage and address. And as an example, your classic coffee cup, it's not paper, it's got a polyethylene, layer on the inside. So that's actually really difficult to recycle. So, Doctor, as you know, when you're doing this analysis, you really need to do that gap analysis and see what infrastructure you've currently got, what plastics you want to manage, and how you're going to do that. Budgets and infrastructure and so on and so forth.
Definitely. I'm total agreement with you, Winston, again. And also speaking about sort of strategies and what have you, we've got some questions about bios. They are referring to plant-based bios, which are basically, we can either classify biodegradables as hydro, which include that sort of family, or oxos. We can also say biodegradable polymers or bio-based polymers. And in both cases, the same answer applies, I believe, as well. It's very country specific, as I've said earlier on. Oxos, or what we have on the market at the moment, could be very environmentally damaging as well in terms of biodegradable plastics. They've got all sorts of stearates and ions, and from our mimicking to landfill conditions, the fact that they don't decompose and deteriorate with time, they are actually leaching out all of those sort of heavy metals and what have you. I would like to thank you both again, once again, Dr. Eleni and Winston. It was very lovely to have you. I would ask you both, please, to turn off your cameras, and both Mrs. Samuel A. and Mr. Sebastian to turn on their cameras, please. Welcome back, both Mr. Sebastian and Mrs. Samuel A. Thank you very much for that talk, both of you. It was very informative and much appreciated. And I've got a few questions here that maybe we can have sort of your insights about. Maybe the first question should be addressed actually to Mr. Sebastian. What do you think within the surge that we've had with this COVID about the plastic waste with all the PPEs and what have you? What would be the best sort of strategy or plan you think would work for us to minimize all of that plastic waste?
Well, for minimization strategy, it's also quite straightforward that just using masks that you can use several times, right? Instead of these masks that are just used for once or twice. So just lower the consumption. It just comes to reduction of waste. And when we speak about the waste hierarchy, in general, this applies for PPE from COVID-19. But also in general, it's always the best thing just not to create waste and to reduce the consumption. But this is more easy to say than really actually doing it. Well, it's always been the challenge.
Yes, that is very true, especially during these times. It's very sort of hard to talk about waste when people are in a fright about all sorts of COVID scares that we've got around. And anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Sebastian, for that. And to Mrs. Samia, maybe a question about the collection. In one statement, as you already know, collection is being handled here in Kuwait. What would you think one good viable solution at the moment for our plastic solid waste or solid waste in general? As one of the attendees has already asked, do you think, for example, RDF is a good way to go forward with that? Or do you have maybe another solution to tackle the problem?
It's all cost benefit, really. It's all about the economic viability of as a solid waste management action plan. We're not going to look at one aspect, one component of the solid waste. It's overall. So for each type of waste, there is a suitable technology. Now, Kuwait there was a plan to have a incineration, a waste to energy plant. This was between Kuwait Municipality and the Public-Private Partnership Authority. They worked on it for 7 years. However, the entire project was stalled at the Kuwait Audit Bureau because of economic feasibility. So RDF is an option. At the moment, we're looking at we're studying each technology and its applicability to Kuwait and the economics of it, whether the return on investment and whether it's feasible. So as I mentioned previously, this data is under review. These recommendations are under review with the Kuwait municipality at the moment. So I can't specifically mention which route they've decided to take. However, they haven't yet, to be frank. But I know that there is still a desire to go back to the incineration. It's just to put everything together and get it done rather than different technologies.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Samia, for that. But we both know, at least I think that you already know, that there are more than one reason to sort of delay that project, which I personally have got few. When I say few, I mean a lot of technical comments about. Nonetheless, I believe since we've done a lot of mining of landfills here in Kuwait, I mean, we are the first, my research group, to conduct landfill mining projects here in Kuwait. And the fact that we can produce high hydrocarbon from our waste, that fresh, high integrity sort of waste, is definitely an indicator, if nothing else, to produce diesel or what have you, which has a very beneficial sort of environmental life cycle analysis compared to other treatments. And to come back to the question, when it comes to RDF, it's all about cost analysis. Maybe the report, when it's finalized, will have more insights into it. Back again to Mr. Sebastian with another question. What do you think about KEPA, their presence within the government? What sort of environmental plans, environmental directives, they could initiate at the moment to take this further on and make our waste more manageable in Kuwait, as it were?
Yeah, I think, or I hope I addressed this in my short presentation. I really think, and this is what we are sharing a lot with EPA, that the strategy of going for EPR would be a good support in building and creating a modern waste management. Because I think we also need to understand that waste management needs to be also a business in order to be sustainable. And I not mean sustainable in an environmental or in a time manner. So I mean sustainable in terms of also profitable. And when you think, again, I can refer from Germany, that just through the EPR for packaging waste in Germany, we are collecting 1.2 billion euros of budget from an EPR system for packaging waste. So Germans are not more environmental friendly or have a better awareness about the environment. This is maybe some rumor that you have, but it's actually not the case. So in Germany, you just have money efficiently collected from the polluter. So whoever produces a packaging must pay, and this is registered and very efficiently collected. And only because of this, we are able to build recycling facilities, waste-to-energy facilities. We are able to close landfills because there's a funding behind, and this needs to be understood, right? So I think, and also in Germany, you have more than 250,000 jobs created in the waste management field. So it's a massive business sector, and this I think should be the directive that should be triggered by EPA Kuwait, that they really incentivize and bring the whole system into this direction. So if this fund is available, then we can really go into the root cause of this problem of marine litter.
That's very informative. Thank you very much, Mr. Fresh. I couldn't agree with you more. It's all about the money, and we need that funding. In Kuwait, about the environmental law. It started off with Law 42, 2014, There have been few additions, amendments in 2017 and 2018 as well, as far as memory serves. But I think we can revisit that, and definitely we need to do a lot more to have that law to be more and more comprehensive on KFAS behalf, especially that they have this new plan to propose a number of works down the line with Kuwait municipality, which brings me very nicely to Mrs. Samia Lid'ay over here. There's a question, I believe, Mrs. Samia, you can answer as well. Where do you think the marine cycle, the marine litter cycle here in Kuwait starts, and what are the main triggers for it? Talking about terrestrial to marine, I suppose, the questions from Ms. Bushra. What do you think the marine litter cycle starts here in Kuwait, and what do you think would be an effective control to those triggers?
I will confess that I think maybe Dr. Sebastian or Brett are more experienced in this in this answer. I will use anecdotal evidence. It's from littering. I mean, from what I see, it's littering on the beaches and the recreational users of boats, etc. This is also anecdotal. However, have we done a survey to identify the sources? No, this is beyond the scope of the work we're doing with Kuwait municipality. To be honest, I think this is probably more of a KPA or CEFAS question.
I can tell you that at the moment we are conducting similar works, and we've just published actually a few articles on the subject matter because we are interested in understanding both micro and macro litter within northwestern part of the Arabian Gulf, Kuwait Bay, for example, which we found evidence, lots of evidence actually, within the enclosed area of Al-Jahra, that part, which is has a lot of fishing activities as well.
Yeah, recreational users, right? Yeah.
Yes, I do not want to say more because some of the fishing is illegal. So that's I'll say circumstantial evidence that we found. Nonetheless, the marine cycle starts definitely either recreationally or mismanaged sort of solid waste within terrestrial environments. And there's a nice article that was published also last month that talks about the triggers and how the COVID is related to it at the moment, and how the sort of accumulation of plastic waste goes back to the marine cycle. That article is in Marine Pollution Bulletin. Probably we can send it out also offline for whomever is interested. With that, and we're coming right to the time, I would like to thank you, Mrs. Samia, Mr. Fresh, and both Mr. Winston, and both also Dr. Eleni, and remind you all that this webinar has a survey towards the end of this session in a couple of minutes by KFAS. The proceedings of today will be also uploaded within the next couple of days on the KFAS YouTube channel. With that, I would like to thank you all, the attendees, for today, and hope to see you soon in future events. Thank you very much. مع السلامة.